I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. Hey, everybody. Oh, it looks like we're probably live from the den. Sunday, September 28th. We are on the cusp of, I got a year live and I got a W. We're on the cusp of October. The cusp of October. In fact, what do we got here? 28th. Tomorrow's 29th. I'll have a video. I'll have Justice League video tomorrow. But yeah, Wednesday. That'll be the first day of October and the first of my werewolf movie reviews. So that's coming soon. Pretty groovy. Yep, 3 days. We're almost there. Can't wait. We've had the house decorated for what, a couple weeks now? So very much in the Halloween mood. I don't know, man. It's one of those things. You just kind of like, it's like Christmas time, you know? It's like this mental bridge to childhood in a way, right? It's not like all of a sudden you don't have any responsibilities, but one of those times where you feel really close to those days when, I mean, other than school, you didn't really have any responsibilities. At Christmas, you had Christmas vacation. That was cool. Of course, now I grew up in Las Vegas. And the cool thing back in the day was Nevada was admitted to the Union on October 31st, Halloween. So Nevada Day, same day as Halloween, and we always had that off from school. So we always had Halloween off from school. Now they've changed it to be like a 3-day weekend kind of thing in the schools, which it's like, I'm sure. Oh, oh, you're right. It was August that you did it. Yeah. I'm old. What can I tell you? But yeah, now it's like a 3-day weekend thing, and you know, but it was always cool as a kid that you always got Halloween off from school in Nevada, in Las Vegas. Well, I hope anybody who out there is watching, I hope you're having a good Sunday. Hope you're having some fun. Maybe got some cool things planned for the day, or at a minimum, just chilling out before the work week gets rolling next week. At least for those of us who work Monday through Friday. I'll tell you what, it's one of the greatest things about my job. Because my first job was as a clerk at a video store. I've talked about that before. But it was like, you know, I don't know what it was, maybe every pay period, so every 2 weeks, they kind of redo the schedule. And so you never quite knew what your days off were going to be. Maybe you'd get lucky and they were 2 days together. Maybe they wouldn't be. Maybe you'd get lucky and one of them was a weekend. Maybe not. It was what it was. And I remember when I finally got a job working for commercial real estate, it's like banker's hours, weekends off, etc. It's like, oh, so nice to have that stuff sort of set up. And so you didn't have to worry about it. Well, anywho, anybody watch Svengoolie or the Sven Squad last night? We stayed up a little bit, watched Amityville 3D. I'd never seen it before. I could probably go without having ever seen it, and it would have been just okay. That is a messed up movie. Like about the first, I'd say half or maybe almost 3/4 of it, you could almost be convinced it was a comedy. Like it's close. It's really close. You have this dude, all these terrible things are happening, right? And by terrible, I mean like people who are close to him, you know, are like being threatened, being hurt. And he's bought a house that's known, you know, at least reputed to be haunted. He doesn't believe it, but at least that's there. He knows, maybe. Dude will not believe anything. No reaction to anything. He reminds me of Richard Benjamin's character in Saturday the 14th, which is a comedy, technically. You don't tend to laugh that much in it, but it is technically a comedy. And so he's supposed to be like oblivious. That's the whole point. This dude is like oblivious, and then people very close to him start dying, and pretty horrifically. So it's like all of a sudden, my daughter and I are watching it, and I'm going, I'm at a point now where I'm not sure if I like the movie or dislike the movie. If I'm just judging it as movies go, I dislike it. But it's so bad it's almost good. I'm almost in that like category. And then a couple things happen, and it's like, no, I'm shifting into the dislike category at this point, because it gets like serious enough that it's not really funny anymore. And the final thing, it's like, this dude is basically responsible for a pretty impressive death toll. And if I'm completely honest, it really doesn't seem like he cares that much. Like, he's just glad it's over with, you know? What a movie. What a movie. Terrible. Yeah, so that was on the Spin Squad last night. And it was, you know, I enjoyed the Spin Squad. I enjoyed those three. So I had that going for me. At least. Oh, we got some buffering going on, my wife tells me. All right, I don't see anything happening over here. So, well, hopefully it'll clear up. And there's Man of War. Those things, yeah, well, and it wasn't really in 3D on television. And there were a couple places where, like, they're doing the thing, doing this towards the camera, you know, very, it's, the problem with 3D movies is they almost never make sense, really, as 3D movies. Like, you have to go out of your way to cram something in that seems 3D-ish, you know, but anyways, like, it was what it was. Dude, Manowar also, I saw a thing a couple weeks ago. I mentioned it in the stream last week. I don't know if you'd seen it or not, but apparently the Kino Lorber stuff was now 50% off at Barnes & Noble. So if there's anything you were looking for, man, in that category, you might find it there. I'm like, dude, it was like right after the stream where you said, their stuff's not on sale. Like right after that, I saw somebody on Twitter with a whole stack of them going, they're 50% off. It's like, all right, gotta let people know. All right, so what did I have prepared for today? It's kind of dorky, but I'm kind of dorky, so what the hell? I had seen somebody, again on Twitter, had mentioned a particular lineup on television that they really loved. They thought it was the greatest lineup ever. I want to say it was like Mary Tyler Moore, Bob Newhart show, Carol Burnett show, or something like that. And but it got it into my brain. I'm like going, yeah, there's some lineups that I've really liked over the years. I wonder what the greatest lineup was. And here I don't mean subjectively, like what my favorite or somebody else's favorite would be, but kind of objectively in terms of ratings. Like, what was the strongest primetime fall lineup ever, network TV? Well, I'm a research guy, so obviously I had to start looking. Well, Wikipedia, with all its problems, does have all the U.S. TV schedules, like forever, on their site. So you can scroll through, see what was on when, etc. You know, it'll show you differences like fall, winter, spring, if they've changed things up. And it also provides, like by a color code, if a show was top 10 or top 20 or top 30. And so I thought, okay, I'll use that. So top 10, basically, what I did is I kind of went through the primetime lineup, and for every half-hour segment, if the show running in that segment was in the top 10, I gave it 5 points, top 23 points, top 31 point, add it all up and figure out what scored the highest. And I looked from 1955 to 2000. And I felt like that's a pretty good chunk of network TV history. Once you get past 2000, you got all the streaming and you got the cable, and well, maybe not streaming, but you had the cable, you know, VHS, DVDs, whatever. A lot of attention being taken off. The internet is drawing people in. Figured that was a good end point. Also because, like, you know, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life doing it. But so I put together the top 10 greatest TV lineups by ratings ever. Oh, I see something from Man of War there. Criterion that was ending, but you're right. Yeah, 50% through October 19th. There you go, man. Cool. So Criterion was ending. Okay. Well, it'll probably be back on before too long. So let's take a look. Because what was interesting when I ran all this stuff was the top stuff, the very top stuff was not what I expected. And some stuff that I expected would be on the list was not. It didn't quite make it. But we'll talk about a couple honorable mentions along the way. So in 10th place, CBS Mondays in 1967 was running Gunsmoke, The Lucy Show, Andy Griffith Show, Family Affair, and Carol Burnett Show. Okay? The first four of those were all in top 10. Carol Burnett was in the top 30. Andy Griffith was the number one show that year with a 27.6 share, which basically I think means like 27 million households were tuning in to Andy Griffith. Figure so that's, that's a pretty big chunk of people, and probably more than any shows are getting nowadays, frankly. That's one thing to have to understand about this. The ratings they were getting back then in a smaller country are probably outstripping most of what you're getting nowadays, even with popular, and especially with streaming shows. They're not getting anywhere close. But this was also the last year for Andy Griffith being on the show, so they were going to change it. But the lineup actually stayed pretty stable in this position for the next 2 years. The next year, you had, instead of Lucy Show, you had Here's Lucy, and you had Mayberry RFD replacing Andy Griffith's show, and it actually did pretty well. Probably because people were just used to watching TV that night. Because I've watched Mayberry RFD, and it is impressive for a show of 25 minutes, whatever it is. Nothing happens. It's a very calming show if you just want to chill out, but nothing happens on Mayberry RFD over the course of a half hour. And then the next year, Doris Day Show got in there and replaced Family Affair. So this is the number 10 place of the greatest lineups ever in terms of ratings, in terms of popularity. Carol Burnett Show is an absolute classic. Of course, Gunsmoke ran forever. It was an anchor. It was on a different night originally, and then it moved to Mondays. But there's some stuff that's kind of lasted. Although a lot of these shows people don't really talk about anymore at all. Coming in number 9 position. Yeah, that's kind of it right there. I figured Monday Night Football was going to be well represented on the list, and it really only snuck in the one time in 1998. So ABC, Mondays, 1998. And the reason is, for one thing, it was like a top 10 show. And it wasn't always top 10. It was often top 20, but not top 10. But they also extended it to cover the entire prime time. Now, before that, it typically, and actually after that year, it's the only year they did that I could see. Typically, it would be preceded by something like MacGyver, which was like top 30, but it wasn't a super high-rated show. It was a very guy show. There was something else before, and it was also very guy show kind of stuff. But this year, 98, is when they hit top 10, and it was like it took the entire prime time up. So it beat everybody on those Mondays. That was a big night for them. In 8th place, from 1995 to 1998, NBC Thursday nights were just kicking ass. And the main reason they were kicking ass was those 3 shows running down that one column, Friends, Seinfeld, and ER. All of them were top 10 shows. And in fact, in 95, ER was number 1 rated, Seinfeld number 2 rated, Friends number 3 rated that season. So they had the top 3 shows on network TV all in one night. Now, in between them, they would sandwich in The Single Guy, Caroline and the City, Suddenly Susan, Union Square, Veronica's Closet, Jessie. They'd maybe last 1 or 2 seasons. Generally forgettable shows, but sandwiched between those, man, it was pretty awesome. And these shows, by the way, 1 or 2 seasons and they were like top 10 shows, but they were only top 10 because they were right there. They'd maybe move them to another night, failed completely. So this went from 95, 96, 97, 98. 98 is when Seinfeld, I believe, ended, and they put Frasier into that position. And Frasier was a top 10 show as well. Manowar says that first batch was was solid entertainment running consecutively. Yeah, exactly, man. Some of these nights of TV are amazing, but some of the ones that didn't make the top 10 were also amazing. And one of those, there's that Frasier logo. Forgot I had that in there. NBC's other famous Thursday night lineup from 1984, which I remember we watched this. We watched the whole thing. You plugged in on NBC Thursday and you just stayed there. Cosby Show, Family Ties, both top 10, but Cheers and Night Court were in only the top 20, losing out to Simon and Simon. Simon and Simon, here's what was fascinating to me. Simon and Simon, you had on, I think it was CBS. Yeah, I think it was CBS. You had Magnum P.I. followed by Simon and Simon. Simon and Simon had the better ratings. And that was probably because Magnum was going up against Cosby Show and Family Ties. Simon and Simon was a top 10 show. So it kind of displaced Cheers and Night Court. Now, eventually Cheers would get into that top 10. And then they're followed by Hill Street Blues, which was top 30. But it was up against 2020 and Knots Landing, which was, pretty stiff competition back then. And Hill Street Blues was, it was replaced the next year, and I can't remember what it was now that replaced it. But this was just an amazing lineup for a night of TV on one network. And it didn't quite make it into that top 10. And wait till we get to the very top. You're going to be amazed. It shocked me. In fact, if I had just said, I'm not going to count multiple years, I'm going to count each year separately, the top, I think, 3 that I have on list would actually have been the top 10. They dominated for years. Up next, we stay in, here we go. So, I skipped one of my notes. Sunday nights, ABC, 1976. Evening starts out with Cos. So a Cosby Show. This was like a sketch comedy show that didn't make it into the top 30. Cos did not last long, but it was followed up by The $6 Million Man and ABC Sunday Night Movie. Now, the Cos show, by the way, was replaced by Hardy Boys' Nancy Drew Mysteries in the winter. So that one did better. I mostly remember that show being on like Saturdays, sort of when the morning cartoons were ending, and like one channel you'd have American Bandstand, Dick Clark, and then you'd have Hardy Boys on and stuff like that. It was sort of like, well, here's something for like the tweens and the teens after the kids are done with cartoons. But it was a primetime show at one point. $6 Million Man was top 10. And so was the ABC Sunday Night Movie. And you got to remember back then, movies on TV was a huge freaking deal. Because again, we're in 76 here. So unless you're ultra rich, man, you ain't got no videotapes of movies. It's in the theater. When it's out of the theater, it's gone. It ain't coming back. So getting movies like that into rotation on TV was a huge deal. Now, sometimes they'd be running like TV movies, some of which become, kind of classics, like Brian's Song. But, it'd be like James Bond, and I think most of us from that time period remember, I think it was, what's his name? Ernie Adams, the announcer, Bond is back on ABC, diamonds are forever. It'd be that kind of, but you think about it, like how cool would it be? Like, can you imagine the Avengers movie on a Sunday night movie thing, Sunday night on ABC, Tony Stark is back as Iron Man and he's bringing the Avengers with him. we don't really have that anymore. It's just streaming. It's on tape. It's on disc. It's whatever. Like, but it was a huge thing. And so the movie nights would typically run pretty strong when it came to ratings. Now, one lineup that didn't make it, and it was ABC as well, Tuesdays in 78. I mean, can you look at this friggin' lineup, and it doesn't make the top 10. Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Three's Company, which I think was new that season, Taxi, and Starsky and Hutch. Laverne and Shirley was the number one show on television at that time. Three's Company was the number 2. Happy Days, the number 3. So kind of just like with that Seinfeld, Friends, ER thing. But Taxi was only a top 30 hit. I don't think it had caught on. It might have been new at that point, too. I don't think it had caught on yet. And Starsky and Hutch did not rank at all. So that really hurt that lineup in terms of ratings. But I can definitely remember as a kid, Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley. And but I seem to remember Three's Company was like, we didn't get to watch that. It was either, we had a 9 o'clock bedtime. So I think it came on at 9. Yeah. Yeah, 8:39. I think that's what it was. I remember thinking Three's Company's got to be amazing because we don't get to watch it. And then I'd catch it later, like in reruns, and I'm like, it's okay. I wasn't old enough to like go, oh, Suzanne Summers, but just from comedy wise, it's like, it's all right. It didn't do that much for. I think I like it better now as an adult. We stay in the 70s for the number 6 top lineup. ABC Wednesday night in 1973, Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour, which I could take or leave. Actually, I could leave. Cannon and Kojak. So all were in the top 10. All of them were hour-long shows. They were padded, though, by local programming, which doesn't get rated. So that's what killed it from getting a little higher up, even though they were all top 10s. Cannon is definitely one of my favorites. Absolute favorite shows. William Conrad, detective show. I love a lot of sci-fi and fantasy. I talk about sci-fi fantasy on the channel a lot, and old horror movies and stuff like that. But dude, I seriously love old detective and cop shows. Big for me, and Cannon is definitely one of my favorites. Kojak, though, I've never really watched. Again, it was super late. It's like Cannon, I remember was in syndication at a certain point. That's when I caught it when I was a lot older. I mean, at 73, I was 1 year old, so obviously I wasn't watching. But I think by the time I was old enough to appreciate it, Kojak just wasn't in syndication anymore. And so I've never really watched it. It's on my list of stuff to watch. In 5th place, again with ABC. ABC was doing well for a long period here in the 70s into the 80s. Tuesday night in 1970, you got the Mod Squad, and note the faces in that picture. Very reminiscent of stuff we saw in, like the 2000s, 2010s, where everybody looks constipated, and it's really because it's just like dumb people trying to look serious. But Mod Squad, which is very earnest, young people, fighting crime, but also fighting hypocrisy, man, and that kind of stuff. It was big in its day. The Rookies was kind of like that too. But then you had the ABC movie of the week, right? Movies of the week, big. And Marcus Welby, MD, which was the number 1 show in 1970. Now, among some of ABC's movies of the week, because they did a lot of made-for-TV ones. Now, this was not in 1970. This is other years, but it was during their movies of the week. You got Duel, one of Spielberg's very first projects. Dennis Weaver. Great friggin'. If you never watched Duel, you got to go watch Duel. It's amazing. And Trilogy of Terror from Dan Curtis. That was one of their other movies of the week. So they did some pretty good, made for TV stuff in movies of the week. But then sometimes it was Hollywood stuff that they would buy. The other movie of the week that caught my eye, I was going through the list. Like, is there anything I want to bring up? I'd never heard of this before. and I found it's on YouTube. I got to watch it. It's called The Feminist and the Fuzz. Like about a feminist and a cop who become roommates or something. But, hear me out here. Barbara Eden, Julie Newmar, and Farrah Fawcett are all in this TV movie. I'm like, it's like a murderer's row of 70s babes, for God's sakes. Like, I got to go check it out. I'm sure it's got to be terrible, but you know, I watch a lot of terrible stuff like Amityville 3D. Another little detour though, for another one that didn't make the lineup, didn't make the top 10. 1966, CBS Wednesday night. This is another really strong lineup that couldn't quite make it. Lost in Space, which remember, did better than Star Trek in terms of ratings. Now, they passed up Star Trek for Lost in Space. And I'm sure ultimately they wish they'd picked up Star Trek because it had longer legs. But Lost in Space did better in terms of ratings. Followed by Beverly Hillbillies, which would have been in color at that point. I just found a black and white image. Green Acres, one of my favorite shows ever, period. Gomer Pyle, USMC. Golly! And the Danny effing K Show. That's a reference to Christmas Vacation, but Danny K Show as well. Many of these would be casualties of the rural purge a few years later. That's when they dropped all these different shows that were set in like small towns, rural areas, and they brought in All in the Family and other, frankly, kind of angry comedies. All in the Family basically survived because of Archie Bunker, strangely enough. The guy who was supposed to be the villain of the series was everybody's favorite character. And then, you know, the Jeffersons, right? George Jefferson's supposed to be the villain. He was everybody's favorite character as well. It's America. We like obnoxious people who are loud. What can I say? But they brought in those shows, most of which failed. They would then spawn, well, the Jeffersons, Maude. I remember Rob Long. It's a funny dude. And he was one of the showrunners for Cheers, like during the Kirstie Alley years. They were talking about like Maude did pretty well ratings wise. And he goes, yeah, nobody was watching Maude because they wanted to, you know, see B. Arthur get an abortion. They were watching Maude because of Adrienne Barbeau. That's why the show was successful. It tells you something though, Hollywood. You could throw in your political stuff, right? But you got to have something there that regular people are going to enjoy. Maybe you can sway them politically with your stuff. Maybe. But at a minimum, if you have an Adrienne Barbeau or you have somebody funny like George Jefferson or Archie Bunker or, you know, Fred Sanford is another one, right? He says all sorts of outrageous crap. People will watch the show and enjoy it. You keep trying to push out this propaganda nowadays, but you're giving no entertainment with the propaganda, so people just turn it off. Once upon a time, you know, but these shows, well, you know, there was maybe a little bit of lesson teaching in them as well, but not quite to the extent of the others. Okay, so at this point, it's going to become a little bit monotonous because we are now reaching into the top 4. But it's also kind of tells you something about the way successful TV works. The final 4 are all CBS. They're all Sunday nights. And they point to the power of older audiences. So, from 1986 to 1988, the airwaves were ruled by the lineup of 60 Minutes, Murder, She Wrote, and the CBS Sunday Night Movie. 60 Minutes and Murder, She Wrote were top 10 shows. The Sunday Night Movie was top 20. And again, Murder, She Wrote was an incredibly powerful TV show. 12 seasons. And it was always really highly rated. Like top 20, top 10. I think usually top 10. And there's a lot of people now who are starting to watch it again. My daughter is one of them. A lot of younger women are getting into Murder, She Wrote. So, like, it's an amazing show. It was really, really powerful back in the day. Yeah, Man of War says, took talent to find a balance. Today's writers are strictly hammer and the nail. I mean, you're right, because you're looking at like, the folks who were writing MASH. It's not like they were sort of moderate in their political opinions. They really weren't. But they still understood we got to make an entertaining show. Like, that's the point. We'll put our stuff in there, but we got to make it entertaining. And MASH, I mean, it got a little bit macabre over the years. It got a little more so as it went. But early MASH was funny as hell. And also war is bad and blah, 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 blah. And, dude, I'm not like pro let's go fight wars. And the fact that they were showing, that Frank Burns being a racist was bad, I'm down with that 100%, right? But there's still sort of, messages that they're putting in. But the show was funny as hell. Now, in the case of All in the Family, and this is something else I picked up from Rob Long, used to listen to the old Ricochet podcast that he was on. Now, he said All in the Family, they really wanted to make Archie Bunker a much more aggressive, ugly racist. The writers did. And what prevented them from that was Carol O'Connor. Because Carol O'Connor was like, they'd write something for him to say, and he was like, no, I know guys like this. I mean, I grew up with people like this. I'm familiar with them. They don't do that. That's not how they talk. That's not who this guy is. He's got his prejudices and stuff. But like Archie Bunker was not a guy who was going to go out and beat somebody up. Now those kind of people exist. It's not saying they don't, but he goes like, that's not this dude. And Carol O'Connor kept Archie Bunker from becoming a really ugly caricature. And frankly, if he hadn't, the show probably would have died in year one, because I don't think people wanted to watch that. I don't think you can make a show where Meathead is the hero and make that work. Because Meathead, however right his views might have been on some stuff, keep in mind he was a complete sexist too, though. He was anti-racism, but he was very pro-sexism. I remember that episode was kind of funny. But Meathead was also a lazy, good-for-nothing turd. And that just, audiences were not going to gloom around Meathead. It wasn't happening. It had to be Archie Bunker. And so Carol O'Connor pretty much saved that show. If he hadn't, it would have drifted much harder left. And I don't think it would have lasted. I really don't think it would have lasted. So yeah, they had balance, but they didn't always have balance. Sometimes they needed a little extra balance from other people to help get them through it. So this was, like I said, from 86 to 88, rules the airwaves, right? Now in third place, we go a little further back, 79, 1980, those 2 years. Still got 60 Minutes anchoring the night, followed by, and speaking of, Archie Bunker's Place. Now that's the show that followed All in the Family. Now in Archie Bunker's Place, Edith has passed away. His daughter, I think daughter and son, or daughter and grandson, and Meathead leaves his daughter. He has an affair. So Meathead is a piece of crap right to the end when you get right down to it. Art imitates life. But so Gloria and their son, his grandson Joey, they move away on another spinoff, which didn't work. And Archie buys a bar. And so Archie Bunker's Place, it did actually pretty damn well, ratings-wise, and stayed on a little bit longer, again, because people liked the Archie character. And then you had One Day at a Time and Alice. And I definitely remember watching One Day at a Time and Alice when I was a kid. Dude, lady who played Flo just passed away maybe a week or so ago. Kiss My Grits. Huge catchphrase. But Alice was pretty funny, actually. And then The Jeffersons, which has got to be one of my favorite shows ever. It's hilarious, man. Just the insults going between George and Florence, and all that stuff. I was obsessed with this show when I was a little kid. I was obsessed with this show as a little kid. Like I said, my father actually had to kind of like pull me aside and go, don't say honky, It's not a nice word. Like, I just thought it was a funny sounding word. Like, it was a funny thing to call somebody. I didn't realize there was a racial connotation. But he's like, don't call people honky. It's not, don't do that. You don't do that. But I still love the Jeffersons. And then I couldn't fit it on the little graphic, but after Jeffersons was Trapper John MD, kind of a spinoff from MASH. Pernell Roberts taking over the Trapper John role, but it's set, in modern times, or 1979 times. Him working in a hospital, etc. Wayne Rogers to Pernell Roberts, to me, is kind of a downgrade in terms of comedy, but it did extremely, extremely well. And Ted from the Neck Up, I know you're talking about too. So that comes in our third place, right? 60 Minutes, right? Still at the top. In second place, from 1997 to 1999, you get 60 Minutes, followed by Touched by an Angel, and the CBS Sunday Night Movie. Basically, Touched by an Angel replaced Murder, She Wrote, and it did extremely well. I never saw it. I'm aware of it. I know what it was about. I remember watching Highway to Heaven back in the day, Michael Landon. I had to. I'm glad you did. Highway to Heaven, I remember watching. I like Michael Landon, but because God, he had just done. Dude, talk about a guy who did well. Friggin' goes from Bonanza to Little House on the Prairie to Highway to Heaven. Dude, from like the is it 60s, or was Bonanza? Did Bonanza even start maybe in like the late 50s? I think it was like maybe 1960. From like 1960 to the late 80s, this dude was on a show that was probably at least in the top 30 every friggin' season. Yeah, dude had a great career. So Highway to Heaven, I remember, but I never watched Touched by an Angel. I have to admit, I do prefer Della Reese in Harlem Nights. If you've never seen Harlem Nights, Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Red Fox, Della Reese. Dude, go watch Harlem Nights. Now, it is not the greatest movie ever made, but damn, it has some good stuff in it. It has some real good stuff, some really funny stuff in it. There's a fight scene between Eddie Murphy and Della Reese that I love. There's some Red Fox and her are like supposed to be married in it, and they go after each other, and it's funny as hell. So if you've ever watched that. So that was second place. Second place, 60 Minutes, Touched by an Angel, CBS Sunday Movie. First place, the most powerful night of television in human history. It was a full prime time, top 10 all the way through, and it lasted from 91 to 94. So they pulled in, what is that? 1994, 4 years. Okay. 4 years worth. 60 Minutes, Murder, She Wrote, CBS Sunday Movie. Right? You think of all the great TV shows that persist through the years in pop culture. Star Trek, right? The old 60s Batman. Magnum PI, right? Rockford Files. You think of all these amazing TV shows, but the lineup that really brought people in and kept people watching for an entire evening, 60 Minutes, Murder, She Wrote, CBS Sunday Movie. And let's be honest, 60 Minutes? 60 Minutes of what? But Murder, She Wrote, man. And the funny thing is, like, I love detective shows. I never got into Murder, She Wrote. And I'm starting to think maybe I should sit and watch a few of them, and try to get into it, enjoy it. But God damn, it did well. And it also shows you, though, even at the time, people would have probably looked at this as old people TV. Okay, well, here's a message to TV networks. Old people watch TV. And in fact, my generation, Gen X, is the last generation that is probably habitually prone to watch TV. Now, a lot of us have gone on to other things, but if anybody's going to sit and watch network TV, it's Gen X. You probably ought to aim all of your programs to Gen X, which means cut the snowflake crap. We don't like it. We want stuff funny, a little drama, some good cop stuff, maybe throw in a little bit of sci-fi, but cut the current day bullshit because we ain't into it. Not the majority of us. You aim TV at Gen X and you'll probably pull in some ratings. You keep chasing an audience that would rather watch TikTok, you're dead. It ain't going to work. So there you go. There's my little goofy research project that I did because, like I said, I'm a research guy. So when a question pops into my head, my first thing I do is like, well, can I do this? Can I figure this out? Can I collect the data? Can I analyze it? I'm a dork, but hey, I'm a dork who gets paid pretty well to be a dork. You can pull a laundry list of quality Westerns. Oh yeah. They did trust the network news and they shouldn't have. I'll be honest with you. Cronkite? No, Cronkite was not trustworthy for the most part. Just as biased as anybody was. He really was. They all kept it a little bit under, but a lot of bias in the news back then. People keep going, oh, but there was a time when no, there was not a time. It didn't exist. Go watch. I'll give you a couple old movies you could watch to get a better understanding of this. You could watch Front Page, or you could watch His Girl Friday, which is the funnier version of it. Go watch Front Page or His Girl Friday. Go watch, what's the name? Oh, I gotta look at the thing. Roxy. Oh, I was gonna maybe do a review on it. I'm looking up. How am I? It's not gonna work. Roxy movie. Ginger Rogers is in it. Maybe I could find it with her. If I could just type properly. Roxy Hart. Okay. Go watch Roxy Hart. It is based on the book that the musical Chicago is based on. With the whole conceit of it is women are capable of committing murders. This is like set in the 1920s in Chicago and getting away with it. The courts will just not punish them. It's never their fault. They can get away with it. And so some reporters basically, a lawyer, but with the help of reporters, convinces this woman who wants to sort of be a star. She's involved in a murder. She didn't commit it, but he says, hey, can kind of confess to the thing, right? It'll be a huge story. You'll get tons of publicity. And the courts will let you go anyways. Don't worry about it. Roxy Hart is not a musical. So it's not like Chicago. It's not a musical. There's a little music in it. You got Ginger Rogers for one thing. But it is an amazing takedown of the corruption of politics, of lawyers, of the press. And it is an old story, guys. The press was always like this. They used to maybe just be a tiny bit more restrained than they are right now. I will say 2025, from 2020 to 2025 is maybe the worst the press has almost ever been. Although they were extremely biased back in the 40s, 30s, 20s, because back then you had newspapers, that's your main press, that's why we call them the press, that were affiliated with political parties. I mean, it wasn't like a secret. There was a Democrat paper in town. There was a Republican paper in town. Okay. And you get that specifically in Front Page and in His Girl Friday. The way that the papers skew the news to favor the party that they're associated with. So you had it. I mean, it was blatant back then too. This is just how the press is, guys. It's never really been particularly honest or particularly necessarily even good at their job. I've dealt with reporters, local papers, good folks. We talk, they get my quotes right. It's fine. There are good reporters out there, but the big reporters who are pulling in the big audiences have kind of always been like, well, a lot of YouTube channels that pull in big audiences, right? Got to be controversial. You got to go for clickbait, you know? I mean, that's kind of how you do it. That doesn't even necessarily mean you're being dishonest, but you're definitely trying to, like, you know, get people. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. And it's always been that way. It's always been a business. When I was a history major at college, I had to, I had one big project on women war workers during World War II. Had to read a lot of old newspapers to try to pick up data on, you know, what they were being paid and stuff like that. Because it was all dictated by the government during World War II. Your salaries, wages were dictated by the government. By the way, yes, the government dictated women got paid less than men. It was just, and the companies couldn't have done anything about it if they wanted to, which they wouldn't have. But I also had to read a bunch of papers from during the American Revolution from the UK. And they were really, really friggin' interesting, you know, seeing newspapers from that far back covering basically the same stuff you'd cover in newspapers nowadays. The main thing I thought was interesting, though, was on those, the first page of the paper was local news. And I remember one of the stories was about a guy who fell out of a window, like a second story window, and died. That's front page. And then the second page was news about, you know, the kingdom, about the United Kingdom, about national news. And the third page was where they got to more international stuff. And that's where the American Revolution stories were. And they were short. There wasn't a lot on it. The British citizens were not necessarily that interested, not as much as Americans were. And they pretty much only reported when Britain won something, which frankly they did a lot. You know, it was a rough war for the United States, but came out in the end. But at any rate, I lost my faith in 60 Minutes when I saw Ed Bradley biased hit piece interview with Gary Gygax in '85. There you go. Yeah, man. Yeah, the whole satanic panic bullshit. Dude, the press ain't, they're not impressive. They just aren't. I'm sorry. If you trust them, you trust them. God bless you and good luck. But who was it? Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton wrote a great essay about the press some years back. And he said, he says, why is it you will open the paper and read a story about something you know well, that you understand, and you'll read it and you're like, this is crap. They got these terms wrong. They clearly don't understand what they're talking about. This doesn't make any sense at all. And then you turn the page and you read a story about something you don't know well, and you go, oh, okay. Well, I accept this as being perfectly accurate. Well, you know they screwed up the stuff that you do know. So why do you think they're not screwing up the stuff you don't know? Now, like I said, I've dealt with local reporters because I get quoted sometimes because I put out reports on the commercial real estate market in Las Vegas. And most of them I've dealt with, great. I did deal with a couple, one of them who tried a hit job on my company, and one of them who I knew was not that trustworthy. I tried one time to do a story with her and totally screwed us. So there's a couple that were really bad. There's been a few that were really great. I love talking to them. I have no problems talking with them at all because I know that they're not, you know, they don't have the knives out. They're trying to get it right. But even then, sometimes, you know, you'll read the story and you're like going, well, okay. I mean, you got the quote right, but I can tell you don't necessarily understand exactly what I was saying because it maybe got a little bit in the weeds. You try, when you do this kind of stuff, you try never to get in the weeds on stuff because you know it's not going to go well. Because these are folks that are trained in being reporters. They're not trained in real estate brokerage. They're not trained in economics. They're not trained in, you know, military affairs and stuff like that. So even if they're not being dishonest, they oftentimes just get stuff wrong because they don't particularly understand it. And yet people read these things and go, okay, I guess this must be right. Hey, there's Raby. How's it going, man? Did they really find a lot of dead people in the desert? I don't know if it exists anymore. Here, I'm trying to get my hair not complete. Oh, no, I'm going the wrong way. There we go. Dude, I need a haircut, something fierce. Not as much now as they used to. I can remember, this has to be like 20 years ago, because I've been working at this place for 30 years. So this is how I have to kind of measure stuff out. Me and the graphics guy, this is when the internet was still kind of new, kind of like the Wild West, but the Las Vegas, well, no, it would have been Clark County. The Clark County Coroner's website had a page where you could see unidentified bodies. All right. And sometimes there were pictures of faces. It's not pleasant, but it existed, to see if somebody could identify them. Now, even if you didn't go that far, and frankly, I didn't want to go that far. I'm like, I don't need to see photos of these people. I feel bad about this already. But what you could do is it would basically tell where the body was found. And so some of these were bodies that were like from the 70s, that had been dumped out in the desert. Or, I mean, it's possible it was somebody who wandered out and got lost. But I mean, it's Vegas, so some of these people were dumped in the desert. And but you would see like where the location was, and we'd be like going, "Oh, dude, that's a residential development now." Like, dude, somebody's house is built over where this person was dumped, and they have no idea. I mean, and what does it really mean in a way? But you'd expect more hauntings as a result than we actually get. We don't get a lot of haunted houses in Vegas. But yes, bodies were found. The mob was very active in Las Vegas, and that's how they dealt with people. The level of Lake Mead has been going down for years. All right, because we're going through, they've called it a mega drought in the Western United States. The reality is, we probably, when Americans first got into the Southwest, the Rockies, etc., they were going through a wet period, and it was assumed that that was normal. Like the levels of rain you got throughout this region, the amount of water in the Colorado River was normal. And it probably wasn't. Now, it could have been a wet period that lasted like 100 years. It seems like it's going back to the dry that it is actually more normal. And so as a result, Lake Mead's been going down because California, the arch environmentalists, they waste water like it is going out of style. And a lot of the water that they suck out of Lake Mead in the Colorado, you know what they use it for? I got this from the water people. They grow sod. They grow grass that they sell in China. Right. So we're taking this water, apparently this scarce resource we all have to worry about. We're using it to grow grass that is then shipped over to East Asia for people's lawns. Insane. Freaking insane. Vegas has done tons to conserve water because we know where we're at. And actually, our straw that pulls out of Lake Mead is at the bottom of the lake. Arizona and California are on the side. It gets low enough, they get no more water. And they're only starting now to go, oh, well, maybe we should try to conserve water too. Don't even get me started. But, on the point of this, as Lake Mead has gone down, they've been finding bodies. And, I don't mean people who drowned because they were having fun out on the lake. I mean, in barrels, they were dumped. So, yes, they do find that stuff, Ramey. It does, in fact, exist. Let's talk about some new releases that are coming. And then maybe I'll chat about, because I don't have a lot of new releases. There we go. So from Abrams Comics Art and Marvel, they've announced Thor, Behemoth of the Black Moon. And this is done by Eric Powell, who is the creator of The Goon. I've never read The Goon. So I don't know if it's great, what it's all about. But this is something apparently he's wanted to do for a long time. Now, information on it. There's two different things I read, and one of them made me go, huh. And one of them made me go, well. Now, the first is Thor facing his father's dark Legacy. And I'm going, Odin's Dark Legacy. Well, I mean, okay, are we getting like current day thrown in here? I hope not. I mean, I'm cool with that. Like Odin's, from a mythology point of view, is like a pretty cagey dude, right? But Powell also describes it as a big cosmic adventure with giant Kirby-style monsters, and the book being a love letter to Jack Kirby and Walt Simonson. That I like. That I'm fully on board with. So this is going to be 80 pages, full color, hardcover, coming May of 2026. So it's a ways away. Might be cool. They've done a few books like this. Alex Ross is one of the, I don't know if he's an editor or if he's just kind of involved, but that Fantastic Four book that he did a while back is part of this series. There's been a couple others, I think. So could be very cool. You might want to look for that one. Ramey, I tried to get some truckers to transport water from Mississippi to Cali for Vegas. It would make money. Yeah, transporting water, though, that way is tough. You can't get as much water in those things. I mean, you got tankers, but yeah, I don't know if it would pay for the amount of water that we use. Vegas is fine. Vegas is fine. We recycle almost everything. Apparently, we have the greatest system on planet Earth. No lie. For recycling the water that we use. That's why they try to keep us from putting out big lawns, because that water evaporates and you can't get it back. But in terms of what we use in our homes, it's like 99% it recycles. We got a great system for that. So we're fine in Vegas. Don't worry about us. Worry about California, worry about Arizona, and actually don't worry about California or Arizona, because we started this process like 20, 25 years ago, and they could have, and they ain't done jack shit. So California and Arizona are going to get what California and Arizona get. Not to be too mean about it, but damn, guys, you're in a desert. Like, figure it out. Odin made butt-flavored. Okay. I don't know what that reference is, but, oh, you're probably talking about mythological butt-flavored mead. I'm not sure which story that references, Ramey, but I'm sure you're not wrong either. The Norse mythology is the most fun to read. It's more fun than Greek. It just is. The Norse stuff's crazy. In time for spooky season, Super 7 has the Universal Monsters 3-pack. You can also buy them individually. Lugosi's Dracula, Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman, and the ever-loving Gilman. $60 for the 3-pack or $20 separately. I realized when I did this that I don't actually have a Gilman figure loose, so I went ahead and grabbed one because he's my favorite of the Universal Monsters when you get right down to it. There's the picture of the packaging. Nice packaging. Super 7 always does nice packaging. Love it. Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a Gaiman fan. I started reading his, what was this book with the gods? I wasn't into it. I'm not a Gaiman, but I love original Norse mythology a lot. But Gaiman, I've read some stuff of his I liked, and a lot of stuff I'm just not into. But they also have a new Svengoolie figure out, if you like old Svengoolie. What's cool is it comes with his coffin. Comes with the coffin. So that's really groovy as well. Those are on sale now. You can buy them right now at super7.com, I guess. For horror of a different kind, Kino Lorber is releasing The Barbarians, starring the Barbarian Brothers, on November 25th. Those two dudes all, oiled up in 4K is probably more than I can handle. But, dude, this is like, it's one of those legendary movies from the 80s, The Barbarian Brothers. Like, if you know, you know. Man-O-War knows. I know Man-O-War knows what I'm talking about. The audiobook is read by the narrator of Little Big Planet. I'm not sure who the narrator of Little Big Planet is. Oh, Man-O-War, what a mess of a movie. Okay. It's got its fans. Well, it's coming out in 4K, guys, so you can find it now. Also from Kino Lorber, The Gracie Allen murder case from 1939, November 18th. I bring it up because I'm a huge fan of Burns and Allen. You've never seen the TV show that those two did. Dude, the dialogue they give Gracie is freaking amazing. And it's like, it's the same kind of surreal stuff that you got on Green Acres later. Like, there's seasons where George Burns, up in his office, has a TV, and he can tune in the TV to watch the Burns and Allen show that's ongoing, that he's in. So he can see all the scenes that he's not in. So he's basically spying on everybody, you know, and he'll like, some character will say some crap about him, and he'll call him up on the phone and make a remark, and they're like, how the hell did he know that? It's weird. Great dialogue from Gracie Allen. If you've never watched those old TV shows, a lot of them survived, and they are well worth watching. Ramey Butler says he's buying it. I know he's talking about the Barbarian Brothers, but anyway, I've never actually seen this movie that they did with Gracie Allen, but I would like to. You're right. Yes, Ramey. Betty White is doing a very Gracie Allen sort of character. God, she was so good at it, though. Yeah. Dude, I like Golden Girls. I won't lie. I do like Golden Girls. From Matt Wagner and Kelly Jones, Dracula, Book 3, The Count, is launching soon. You can find more about this at bloodydisgusting.com. There's a cover. There's a little interior art sample. Just delivered to the den this week. Dracula, the Brides. This is the second book. It is still in the shrink wrap. And I thought, what the heck? Let's remove it from the shrink wrap live on camera. And then I'm going to open it, and I'm going to see if it is possible to find one page in this book that I can actually show on the stream. Let's take the image down. Okay, here, okay, that's not, there's nothing inappropriate there. But this is Kelly Jones, and it involves Dracula's Brides specifically. So you know there's going to be art in it that is not all ages, not friendly to everybody. Here, there's the first page. If you have not gotten any of these, I highly, highly, highly suggest you check it out. If you're cool with more mature comic stuff. The first book was good. It was solid. Obviously, I haven't read this one yet. I just got it. But there's the back cover. But Kelly Jones is freaking killing it on the art. It is amazing. It's one of the great things about. Oh yeah, I can't show that. That was downright Deja Thoris-esque. Look at that. He's killing it on the art in these things. Well written. You get actually a little bit as well that sort of goes into the mythology of these characters. That one's got a little. I mean, that's a classic painting, so maybe I can get around with it. But you get essays kind of telling you here's where they're getting some of their ideas, the inspirations. Because it's extremely well researched. Matt Wagner has done his stuff on this. It's not just like here's my take on Dracula, what I think it should be. It pulls from all sorts of Dracula legends. So the second book is now being fulfilled. The third one's coming up soon. You might be able to grab the first and second on the third campaign. But I also think they are in some comic shops. They could be on Amazon. I'm not sure, but you might want to take a look because they're friggin' really good. I was real excited about it when they announced these things. So, Matt Wagner, Kelly Jones, Dracula. Check it out. Awesome, awesome stuff. The Topps miniseries from the 90s was great about Vlad the Impaler. I can imagine that. That's a very interesting character. And that's really what they base a lot of this on, is Vlad. But interesting stuff. But definitely for mature audiences. Only it ain't for kids. From McFarlane. Couple pre-orders that are popping up on September 30th. So right around the corner. You got Super Mullet. And of course, by that I mean Superman with a mullet. It is from 0 Hour. I'm not even really familiar with that. And also, the Joker, based on his appearance in Crisis on Infinite Earths, which I got to say is pretty darn cool. Looks like you got a cloth coat, so there's mixed media. Cloth cape. I saw people complaining that it was not wired, and they were very angry about that. Although I'm kind of going, are you sure it's not wired? Do you know it's not wired? It's a picture, for God's sakes. Maybe it's wired. Maybe they say in the description it's not. I don't know. Dracula is the greatest Orthodox Catholic fairy tale. Yeah, well, maybe. I follow a few Orthodox Christians. They might argue with you on that about some things, but yeah, it's definitely within their realm, though. That's for sure. Although Romania, if I remember correctly, Romania is a Roman Catholic country. It's not Orthodox. Although it probably has Orthodox elements. So I'm not positive. I think Romania was the one that was sort of the oddball in Southeastern Europe as not being Orthodox. I might be wrong on that, though. Don't take that as being absolutely accurate. A few new entries other than the Dracula book that I got this week. And maybe it's better if I am over there. Hold it up like this. Saints and Sinners from Rippaverse arrived. This has got some stories in it from some YouTube folks. We got Will Jordan, the Critical Drinker, Az from Heel versus Babyface. We got Mahler. We got Drunk 3PO. Eric July has a story, and Sylvia and Jen Soska do as well. I've started reading this last night. I've gotten through 4 stories so far. I think Az's story is my favorite. Also has freaking awesome art. There's a great shot here. All of these stories so far they're kind of like part ones. Like there's more to them. Az's felt more like you got a complete story that is part one of maybe more stories. The Drunk 3PO one, the Eric July ones felt more like the first third of a TV episode. And, but not bad. Like, okay, I definitely like to see more. There's another shot from just sort of a pinup from the Az story. Interesting. They're all giving you some interesting stuff. I will say that for a certainty. The Eric July one's really interesting because it's a dude who's a paper pusher. He's a lawyer, and he's finding like there's maybe some corruption going on in the prison system, maybe involving one of the like superhumans. Bone God from Mahler is really interesting. It brings something very interesting into the Rippaverse. We'll see how they handle that. I have not yet read the Soska's story. I have not yet read Critical Drinkers, so I can't comment on those. But so far, I'm liking it, and I'm hoping, well, you're sort of giving me the openings of stories. I'd like to see what happens with them. So maybe they'll bring some more stuff with that. From the comic shop this week, new X-Men facsimile, bringing Kitty Pryde into the X-Men. Haven't gotten to read this one yet. I was thinking the last facsimile issue was going to be like their final one for that chunk of the Dark Phoenix saga, but apparently I was wrong. So maybe there's more coming. Bran was Irish, and if you notice, the English upper class are the ones who... That's good. That's a good point. That's a good point. Never forget the anger of the Irish towards the English. Also, facsimile edition of Batman #1, which pretty much rounds out the first year of Batman. I did that whole video on Batman Year 1. This is who Batman is at the end of his first year. Doesn't look like the angry Dark Avenger with a gun running around, supposedly shooting people, which he didn't really do much of. The main thing you get in this book is the Joker, who appears, I want to say, in 3 stories in this book. If memory serves. You also get, this was Hugo Strange with Monster Men. So I always said, Batman got into weird sci-fi stuff right from the get-go. Remember, in his first year of stories, Gardner Fox writes several of them. Not Bob Kane. And my guess is, Manowar actually have the original. Yeah, you lucky bastard. I know, I don't have any of those. But I'm glad they're doing facsimiles with like the old ads intact and stuff. I love that stuff. But, when Superman #1, which I got that facsimile right over there and I can't grab it. But Superman #1 was all just reprints from Action Comics because it was intended, apparently, to just be a one-shot with reprints. And it sold so well, they're like, oh, let's do more Superman comics. And that became a series. I think with Batman, that was the intention right from the get-go. So you got like 4 or 5 Batman stories in it. And what I'm wondering is, if when Batman sort of hit it in Detective, if National was like, told Bob Kane and Bill Finger, write some stories for a Batman comic book, we'll have Gardner Fox fill in on Detective. And he wrote like 2 or 3. That's like the werewolf story is one of his. Yeah. Joker died a ton in the Golden Age. You are not wrong, man. He dies 2 or 3 times in this book alone. That was kind of the Joker thing, was like, they were kind of, the first one did not seem like a mysterious, well, no, let me take it back. The first one, he's put in prison and then he escapes. He dies at the end of this one. Apparently. Yeah, because he takes a knife. Did he fall on it? Yeah. Man, Stinger's back. Yeah, that's what it was. So here it is, in fact. Joker has a knife, makes a move on Batman and stabs himself, laughs maniacally, falls down, the police run up. But then, like, in the next appearance, it turns out it didn't kill him after all. Yeah, the greatest armor you can have in comic books is good sales. Yeah, Bob Kane borrowed a lot of art from a lot of places. Bob Kane was not a great artist, to be honest with you. Sheldon Moldoff did a lot of that work later on, and he was doing some of the stuff. He never got credit, but we know now that it was Moldoff drawing into Bob Kane's style. But yeah, Sprang was a better artist for sure. The other thing that came out this week, New Fun, the big comic magazine. And I saw like a picture of it online. I thought it was going to be like the same size as this dude. But no, this sucker is huge. And what's kind of groovy about it is it has a cover date of February 1935. So we're 3 years before Superman and 4 before Batman. So none of it is that kind of superhero comic books stuff. And it's all basically like a page each for each strip. So this is what comics started out as. Comic books were just reprints of comic strips. That's it. It was just reprints of comic strips. In fact, the back page is kind of a comic, Tom Mix, but it's also selling you some crap. You get ads. This is on newsprint too. So it's kind of cool. I haven't gotten to read it yet. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, in fact, the cover is just a friggin' comic strip. But we forget. We kind of think of comic books as being something different from comic strips, and it's not really. I was reading Stan Lee's Bring On the Bad Guys that he did. That reprints, a bunch of the origins of Marvel supervillains. And he refers to them as comic strips. in his little editorial bits all the time. He doesn't say comic books most of the time. He says comic strips because that's the period he's from. Oh yeah, dude, I know I've been looking for the hardcover Dick Tracy one that I used to get in the library for a long time, and I haven't quite found it. I thought I had, and I got the book, and I'm glad I got it, but I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't the one I was thinking of, because it's more writing about Dick Tracy than just Dick Tracy strips. So the other thing, I picked up a few back issues, but they had a bunch of Dazzler. I'm putting them in order here. They had a bunch of Dazzler for $1. So I snagged a few. There's Dazzler taking on Dr. Doom, which she did. She took on Galactus too. There we go. I know I'm showing more of the. So I grabbed a few of these that were for $1 because I am collecting the series. But dude, also got the photo cover. Very cool. I love those. There she is, Power Man and Iron Fist. And there's where she got the new costume. She had it at that point. Caught in a game. Oh no, caught in a grip of death. That was me trying to read the thing on the little tiny screen that I'm looking at. And failing. So there you go. That's what I got from the comic shop this week. The 70s Squirrel Girl, kind of. Although I like the character. And it's a really tragic comic when you read it in its entirety, what happens to the character. I think mostly because she's just mostly mishandled through most of it. But yeah, early on, they, rather than building a, like with Spider-Man, you know, they're building a Spider-Man sort of mythos right from the get-go. His side characters, his villains, you know, and then he interacts with Fantastic Four and all that stuff. But they were building Spider-Man as his own book. Dazzler, right from the get-go, versus the Enchantress, versus Doctor Doom. She deals with Galactus. She goes up against the Hulk, although that's actually a pretty good issue. But it's like, so who are Dazzler's villains? There's kind of a couple, but they should have really focused more, because I think they had an interesting concept as well with like the music industry, like in New York and the club scene. And you could have done a lot of cool stuff. And they really didn't for the most part. Where are we at? Hour 17 minutes. Yeah, we probably need to wrap this dude up. I will mention one thing. One movie that I managed to watch this week, other than Amityville 3D last night. A Trio of Terror, Vincent Price, Twice Told Tales. So this has been floating around on YouTube for a while. I finally kind of watched it / listened to it while I was working. And, dude, it was really good. I got to say, it's an anthology. He used to do a lot of great anthology movies with horror. So it's 3 stories, loosely adapted from Nathaniel Hawthorne stories. You get, and some good, like, kind of TV guest stars in these things. Sebastian Cabot, you know, speaking of Family Affair, also, you know, the voice of the narrator in the Winnie the Pooh cartoons, is in Dr. Heidegger's Experiment, along with Marie Blanchard, who was known for having, like, I think, is that Marie Blanchard? I think it's her. Was known for having, like, the greatest legs in Hollywood. There was some giant sculpture of a leg on top of a building in LA. I think they sold like lingerie at the place or something, or they manufactured it, and it was based on her leg. I've seen this on Twitter a couple times. There's a story, Rappaccini's Daughter, with Joyce Taylor, one of the last things she appeared in, and Brett Halsey, great nephew of Admiral William Bull Halsey. And that story I was actually familiar with. And then House of the Seven Gables with Beverly Garland, one of my favorites, Jacqueline DeWitt, and Richard Denning. Really, really good. Oh, yeah. No, Sebastian Cabot he's not Shere Khan. That was George Sanders was Shere Khan. Cabot was Bagheera. Cabot was Bagheera in Jungle Book. Yeah. Oh, there's great voices in Jungle Book, dude. You know, Kaa the snake. Speaking of Winnie the Pooh. And who else? And well, of course, Baloo is. Why am I blanking on his name? Oh, for God's sakes! I'm getting old. It's Jack Benny's band leader. For crying out loud. Phil Harris doing Baloo. And I am blanking on the guy who did Winnie the Pooh. No, that's cool, man. That's cool. But yeah, but he was great as Bagheera. And yeah, Shere Khan, dude, George Sanders, you know. Oh, he's so good in that voice of his. Yeah, there's my wife with Phil Harris. She probably beat me to it, but I get a little lag on the chats. Any rate, though, Trio of Terror is great. It's perfect for Vincent Price. It's that sort of late 1700s, early 1800s period horror kind of stuff. Not a ton in the way of special effects, but a little bit. And it's good. It's fun. It's not like you're not going to watch it and be, oh my God, you know, it's not that kind of thing. But like if you want a nice, chill movie with some spooky tales, you know, as we're moving into fall, Twice Told Tales, definitely worth it. And the other thing, and I don't have the book back here, but I grabbed an image. I have started reading Common America Alpha. It's a manga. You read it in reverse kind of deal, so to speak. Sterling Holloway. Thank you, dear. I like it. I wasn't sure what I was going to get out of this one. It's Japanese storytelling, anime, and I guess manga, now that I'm reading some of it. Even though it's American, but it's done in the Japanese style. Likes to throw you in the middle of things with stories. I've noticed that with a lot of anime, and it's like beyond stuff like Speed Racer and all that, like real anime, so to speak. You start watching it, and you're like, you can go sometimes half or 2/3 of the way through going, I'm not sure I know exactly what the hell is going on. Like the first 10 or 15 minutes of an anime sometimes is just like, do I even like this? Do I want to... And then gradually they fold you into the events that are unfolding, and you kind of get into it and the characters. And then somewhere along the line, you're like, oh, I get it now. I totally get what's going on. Okay. And this one is kind of similar. I start reading it and I'm like, I don't know what the hell is going on. Is it because I'm new, or is it what? And then I'm now far enough in where it's like, okay, I kind of get what's going on. I get the vibe. And I dig it. I like the characters. They're pretty cool. So yeah, there you go. Common America. Enjoying it. I might get some more. We'll see. They're coming out with some stuff, I think, pretty soon. All right, folks. Coming this week in Dad's Den tomorrow. Justice League America number 39. Justice League Europe number 15. Some big storylines, especially for Justice League Europe, coming up. Hardcore stuff. Funny book, but they could do action, and they could do drama as well. Raimi has to go. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you stopping by the chat. Don't worry, we're wrapping it up. You're not going to miss much. On Wednesday, October 1st, Werewolf of London. Going to do a review on that one. Just need to edit that at some point today, probably. I need to also do reviews today of Wolfman and Captain America Year One. So those are coming a few weeks from now. And then on Friday, I'm doing a little read-through review of Gamma World. One of my favorite old role-playing games. Fun reading through it again. It had been a while. Great rules-light game. You could use this. You could spin this into a superhero game. You could use it for almost any sci-fi you wanted to do. Awesome stuff. So that's coming on Friday. So that's what's coming up for Dad's Den. I got some videos to make today, but I hope everybody has an awesome Sunday. Thank you, Man of War. Thank you, Raimi. Thank you, Lady Wendelin, for being in the chat. Super appreciate that. If you weren't in the chat, jump in next time around, man. Just throw in. It's cool. I mean, assuming you're on a computer and you can actually chat. I know some folks are maybe watching on things where they can't. But thanks for watching anyways, even if you weren't in the chat. Really appreciate it. What do I always say at the end of these things? God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another, especially these days. Have a little bit of fun. We are moving into the spooky season. Watch some scary movies. Drink some, hot cider. Get ready. We're heading into fall and winter. And hopefully calmer days ahead, although I kind of doubt it. And hopefully I will see you again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye, folks.